Welcome to today's video, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Today we're going to discuss how I passed the CSCS exam and how you can too. Let's get right into it, guys, with number one. I'm sorry, but you have to read the textbook. The Essentials of Strength Training and Conditioning textbook by the NSCA. I believe the 4th edition is out right now. That is number one. You need to read that textbook. Let's get that done and out of the way. It's a very dense textbook in some sections, but you'll be thanking yourself later that you got through it. Now, when you go through it, don't just kind of skim read, highlight, take notes, and really try to work yourself through it and understand the graphs and things like that as well. You'll be thanking yourself later. Now, at the same time, when I was reading the textbook, I also bought the NSCA practice questions that you can find on their website. So that was a great first step for me because it allowed me to kind of figure out where are my weaknesses here? How can I direct my studies a little bit better? So at the time, I needed to focus a little bit more on the nitty-gritty exercise science sections, and that allowed me to be able to direct my studies in later steps, okay? So once you have that section out of the way, and you need to have that section out of the way, you don't need to have the NSCA questions bought, but that was just kind of like a supplemental learning experience. It allowed me to kind of direct my studies, but definitely read the textbook. Now, once you have that out of the way, let's move on to step two. This is what I did. I used the Pocket Prep app, okay? So if you've been looking for resources to study for your CSCS exam, I'm sure this has come up on multiple forums. This Pocket Prep app has approximately 800 questions, or maybe not approximately, I think it's exactly 800 questions on it. So that was the next thing I did. I got through the textbook, I was going through my notes, and I'm like, I really want some more practice questions in addition to the ones that were at the end of the chapters, and that is what I bought. I believe it's about $30 American. I'm in Canada, so it was about $40, $50 Canadian. So I worked through all 800 questions, and I worked through them all until I got them all right. So the first time I worked them through, I got probably 700 out of 800 correct, and then I did those 100 again until I got them all right. So the major benefit of these questions is that they have 3 answers when you're going through them, and that mimics the CSCS exam. So other practice questions that you'll run into on other study guides and things like that, they'll have 4 answers, and that doesn't mimic the CSCS exam. You'll have 3 answers to choose from. In terms of the difficulty, some are definitely a little bit easier than what you'll experience on the actual exam, but the most important part of this Pocket Prep app is what you can take after answering the question. So there's a section, it says like learn more or something after you answer the question. You can click on a little button there and then pull up a bunch of information. And that information is from the NSCA textbook, and you can read through the section that relates to that question on the Pocket Prep app, if that makes sense. So it's not even necessarily the questions that are so important. It's when you get it wrong, you can learn more or swipe up or whatever. There's an additional section there, so you can learn more, and it comes right from the textbook. Okay, so that's pretty important there. Now, the third thing I did was, at this point in time, I've gone through the textbook, I've gone through the Pocket Prep questions, but I feel like a lot of the material in the textbook, I wasn't able to apply it to real life situations right away. If I'm thinking about how can I apply this material in the plyometrics section, for example, or the sprinting or whatever it may be, how can I really answer questions and relate this back to coaching athletes? Because that's really how you want to benefit from this study process, guys. That's the most important part, right? So I found the movement system by Matt Casturo on Facebook. I joined his Facebook study group initially. So Matt Casturo has a Facebook study group. I joined that, and then I learned about his movement system study guide. Okay, so that is what I bought next. It's about $150 American. It was about 200-ish Canadian, but I found it worth it. I'm a very visual learner, so I like learning from videos, and this study guide is all videos. So it's a step-by-step, like chapter-by-chapter study guide, and he just sits down and he's on the video and he has slides. It's like sitting in a university lecture, and that's kind of what I'm used to, and I like listening to someone and just taking notes in kind of like a lecture-oriented format. So I found that very beneficial. And I don't know Matt, I'm just giving him a shout out because it helped me, and I think it would help most of you. that material there, those videos and things like that, that allowed me to really apply the dense information found in the textbooks and apply it on the floor. So I'm currently coaching, I'm currently working full time and whatnot, and his videos allowed me to pull this dense information and really apply it live on the floor while coaching. Once I was done going through the movement system study guide, I went through that a couple times, and now we're about a week out from my exam. Okay, so this is the fourth thing I did, the Ryan Grella study guide. So I'm about 5-6 days out from the exam, and I found myself just going through the exact same material, and I wasn't growing in my knowledge. I was just reviewing, and I wasn't learning anything new, and I found that to be an issue. So I wanted to kind of switch it up and last minute go through a completely new study guide so that I could challenge myself a little bit more and ensure that I was on the right track. So that is when I bought the Ryan Grella study guide, about $30, I believe, American, about $40-50 Canadian once again. And this was a great way for me to wrap it up. This was a condensed study guide, went through everything in the textbook, and it allowed me to go through the document very, very quickly and kind of comprehend all of the concepts at once. And I could sit down and go through that document in about 45 minutes or so, because I've read the textbook, I've gone through multiple study guides, I've done hundreds and hundreds of practice questions at this point, so it was quite easy to go through the material, and it was just a nice way to completely summarize and refresh the information. So prior to the exam, I did this study guide, and I also did, I believe it comes with about 500 practice questions. I did all of those. So this entire process took me about 2 months. I started lightly reading the textbook maybe about 7-8 months ago, just referencing it in my office there and pulling it up when I needed to, but I really started diving in about 2 months ago, starting with getting through the entire textbook. I was pumping out maybe 2-3 chapters a day. I wouldn't recommend doing it like that, but it is possible, and I've heard other people that have done the same thing if you have a background. Now, my background is in science of kinesiology as my bachelor. I'm also a clinical exercise physiologist, and I currently work in the field and work full time and have for a few years now. So I did have a very strong base. So if you're coming from a different field, or you don't have a lot of work experience, or whatever the case may be, you definitely may need more time to prepare for this exam. Now, the other thing that I wanted to touch on prior to closing out is pre-test anxiety, because I was there just over a week ago, right before the exam, and I realized this is such a large component of this test that nobody talks about on YouTube. So I really want to just talk about it briefly and just let you know that the process is more important than the outcome. And the textbook actually references process and outcome goals, so that's kind of funny, so you can look that up. But the process is always more important than the outcome. If you go there, there's 2 sections, right? Practical and science. And if you only pass one section, you're so much closer than you would have been if you didn't pass any, right? It's all about the process. Even if you go there and don't pass any, the grind time that you put in to get yourself to a point where you thought you were ready, potentially, to test is so important and crucial and valuable to the process, and you will get that CSCS one day soon. It's just you got to put your head back down and get right back to the grind. So thank you very much for joining me, guys. I engage with 100% of people who comment on my videos, so if you have any questions at all, obviously not like specific to what I saw on the exam, because I won't be sharing any of that, but if you have any questions at all in terms of my process or whatever the question may be, I will answer you and I'll comment back. If you enjoyed this video, give me a like, consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.